Good morning, everyone. Could you please take your seats? You may have noticed that we like to start and stay very much on time in this meeting. Your time is valuable and precious to us, and so we want to return the favor and keep you on time. I want to wish you all a very good morning. I hope you didn't have turbulence coming in yesterday from the thunderstorms, which were pretty exciting up a little north of us. So I'm Sarah Jarique. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Office of Housing Counseling. I've been in that position since 2012, and I'm thrilled to continue our work together and thrilled to recognize the positive results of our relationship between HUD and the intermediaries and HFAs. I do want to start right off the bat by recognizing HUD staff who are present. And if you could stand, any of the HUD staff with a yellow ribbon, they are your guides and welcome wagon for today. And I also just want to thank them for all that they do for the housing counseling program every day. Thank you. I am going to ask them to gather right before the lunch or at the lunch break so that we can take a photo. We're not often all together since we're coming from so many places. I also want to thank the HUD Intermediary Coalition, the National Council of State Housing Finance Agencies, and the National Housing Resource Center. All of the trade associations worked with us on this agenda. We feel that it's a mutual and collaborative effort today to address the concerns that you have in making the HUD housing counseling program the best. I knew I was going to use my voice. We're delighted to hold this meeting once a year, and one of the pieces of feedback we got back from last year was that it's not long enough. Usually we don't hear that, honestly. Usually it's like, oh, could you let us out a little earlier? But this year we're experimenting with adding a half-day session tomorrow just on technology and counseling. It'll give us a chance to really dive into the issues of how we can use technology to change our relationship with our clients, to change and improve our business models, and to network, literally and social network on what are best practices and what can we learn. A lot of your sub-agencies are very concerned about technology changes, and we hope tomorrow you'll take away some good information to share with them and think about. I think the topics, you'll hear more about the agenda from Jane and Javon, who are your hosts today. But I'm very excited to join you in learning and hearing more and seeing those of you that I haven't had the chance to catch up with more recently. I'll take a moment now, though, to introduce our special guest and speaker for this morning, Brian Montgomery. Well, we are very lucky to have him, and I think many of you who know him know why. Brian currently, I'm sorry, the Acting Deputy Secretary Brian Montgomery, I'm very informal, serves as the Acting Deputy Secretary for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. In this role, a tiny job, he manages the day-to-day operations of HUD and advises and assists the Secretary in leading the department's nearly 8,000 employees toward our core missions. And he personally, I will say, has made a lot of progress on some of our core mission issues. Mr. Montgomery also has the job of Assistant Secretary for Housing, Federal Housing Commissioner for HUD. He was nominated by President Trump in 2017. And his confirmation marks the first time an individual has served as the head of FHA twice under 3 different administrations and in a bipartisan role at that. His over 30 years of experience in the public and private sector has brought him a deep knowledge of housing issues and how to make large-scale policy change. Much of his work, I think he'll tell you about how it connects to housing counseling and what he expects of us as housing counseling, to run the housing counseling program. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Acting Deputy Secretary Montgomery.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Appreciate that kind introduction. You read it just like I wrote it, so appreciate it. I also want to thank, can y'all hear me okay back there, by the way? Also want to personally thank Sarah for her tremendous leadership and for her outstanding team that works very hard every day on behalf of the taxpayers. And I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Secretary Carson, who regrets he could not be here due to his travel schedule. He's currently in North Dakota, visiting Grand Forks and the Spirit Lake Nation. So you are stuck with me for a second straight year. But this is now the Office of Housing Counseling's 5th annual HUD-approved Intermediary Conference. And I want you to know that I also share the Secretary's enthusiasm for the work that you are doing. HUD's housing counseling partners are a vibrant network across the country who help ensure that renters, first-time home buyers, and homeowners understand the rights and responsibilities of where they live. Often, housing counseling provides a timely resource and life-changing information that arrives at a critical point in a family's life. But with us today are many state housing finance agencies and national, regional, and multi-state organizations who do just that. All of you are here. The intermediaries play a vital role in ensuring a strong nationwide network of HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. These agencies help households make informed choices so that they can achieve their housing goals over time. As most of you know, as HUD's Assistant Secretary for Housing and Acting Deputy Secretary, I help oversee the Office of Housing Counseling. But I also serve as the Secretary's designee on the Board of NeighborWorks, a role I previously held during my first tour of FHA Commissioner from 2005 to 2009. And I've enjoyed, once again, being involved with the NeighborWorks organization. And I see some things haven't changed since we're still dealing with Counselor Max issues. A little housing counseling humor never hurts. Yeah. The point is, I'm an advocate and supporter of the value of these services. Well, looking ahead is an important for potential home buyers or those experiencing a rough patch to understand that counselors can assist them in many ways. This includes services to the homeless, to those searching for affordable rental housing, to folks recovering from natural disasters, and to those who are struggling to pay a mortgage. In FY 2018, HUD-approved housing counseling agencies, nonprofits, and local government entities assisted over 1 million households. And that is a huge number. About 60% of those served were low to moderate income, and about 11% were from rural areas. Independent research has demonstrated that counseled families have significantly better outcomes. Those results include higher savings, fewer foreclosures and mortgage defaults, and better use of credit when compared to similar families who were not counseled by HUD-approved agencies. The last financial crisis helped us realize the importance of sound housing counseling. As we know, too many families were ill-served. When an enormous correction in the housing market struck over a decade ago, our housing counselors performed a critical role for many families, which I witnessed firsthand. As the enormous challenges of that era recede, it remains clear that housing counseling should continue to play an important role in helping people with budgeting and credit issues, preparing people for home ownership, and helping to prevent foreclosures and evictions. So what is on the horizon? Agencies are seeing an increased demand for counseling and education for first-time homebuyers. This is an important trend as counselors are well positioned to help families independently assess readiness and affordability of home ownership. As millennials and younger age groups enter the housing market, there is an increased appetite for service delivery in easily accessible formats. Technology, to be sure, will play a greater role than ever in the share of information, the delivery of counseling, and educational services. I believe there is a particular opportunity in the area of disaster-related counseling services. Finding temporary housing and working with lenders and contractors are major challenges even under the best of circumstances. These tasks are exponentially more difficult in the midst of the financial and psychological injury inflicted by a natural disaster. Housing counselors were instrumental in helping our most vulnerable citizens navigate the multiple issues that arise. Last year, as most of you know, HUD published an extensive disaster toolkit for housing counselors. HUD has supported these kinds of services throughout additional training grants, and the feedback has been incredibly positive. Incidentally, we are delighted that we were able to finalize a training note for national organizations, I believe, just yesterday. It's been a long time coming, but an important development. We are also working diligently and swiftly to score the 2-year comprehensive NOFA and to finalize our work in the very near future. And I am told the extension of the grants for 2 years was much appreciated. We are looking forward to hearing further feedback and whether you found the application process easier than previous years. Another important objective for HUD has been building capacity to provide more HECM default counseling. It's no secret that we are concerned about the performance of that program, but have taken steps over the last 2 years, and we believe we have put the program on much sounder financial footing. We hope that better access to counseling will help HECM borrowers clearly understand their obligations, including paying taxes and insurance. This, in turn, should lead to improvement in HUD and the borrower's experience with HECM loans and reduce the number of T&I defaults. And it is our collective responsibility to make sure HECM borrowers understand the program and what is expected of them and their heirs. I'd like to commend all of you for the work you do to help families make good housing choices by providing your networks with critical supportive services, including training, technical assistance, and pass-through funding. I want to thank you in particular for your focus on compliance and oversight. Intermediaries add value to consumers through your oversight of program quality and by ensuring compliance with federal grant requirements. As you may know, we wrapped up our acknowledgement of 50 years of housing counseling with a conference during Homeownership Month in June. I hope many of you had the opportunity to attend. It was a great opportunity to take a closer look at topics such as maximizing the value of housing counseling and how changing demographics will affect the future of housing counseling. With speakers such as Chris Herbert from Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies and Ed DeMarco, president of the Housing Policy Council, there was an engaging and thoughtful conversation about changes that could help make consumers more aware of the benefits of housing counseling. Well, it seems that this is the right time for a conversation about the future of this industry, given the transition many agencies are currently making from providing foreclosure services to home ownership services, and as millennials enter the housing market. These and other issues compel us to continue to find innovative ways to make homeownership affordable. This year, also during Homeownership Month, in conjunction with the National Association of Home Builders, we hosted for the first time the Innovative Housing Showcase on the National Mall. It was an extraordinary opportunity to highlight new home building technologies designed to make housing more affordable. And thankfully, housing counseling was there. At least 8 D.C. metro area agencies joined us by staffing a booth hosted by HUD's Office of Housing Counseling. It was a great way to help people in the metro area gain better understanding of the kinds of housing assistance available to them. And thank you again for those who participated. Again, I want to join Secretary Carson in expressing our consideration for all that you do and all of your efforts that contribute to a more meaningful housing counseling enterprise and to the overall mission of HUD. I look forward to the continued feedback from you on HUD's housing counseling program and what this conference affords you, as well as the benefits we all receive from your interactions and from the sharing of best practices in program implementation. Well, thank you again, and I hope you enjoy your meeting and benefit from the training, the peer-to-peer sessions, the network opportunities, and much more. Thank you again. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Brian. Your support is really appreciated, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take care. I'll introduce you. I'm really happy to introduce our organizers for the conference today from HUD, Javon Bly and Jane Charita. Javon and Jane have been working since the day after the conference last year to make sure that we're delivering an important and meaningful event for you and that we get out of you all of the ideas and suggestions you have for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Jane.
Thank you, Sarah, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. It's so great to see some familiar faces and several new faces as well. We always like to expand our conference every year, so I'm so glad you could make it. I'd like to go over a few logistics with you, but first I'd like to introduce the ICF team. They help us facilitate the meeting, and If you have any questions or need assistance, they'll be happy to help you. ICF folks, if you could stand so people can put a face with a name. We have Shauna Marai, Rachel Lilliard, definitely Nicole Hassman, Dan Hegner, and Kim Wallace. So they, along with the head folks, will be happy to help you today. Restrooms are to the left of the auditorium. This morning you were escorted in by security. It's really important that if you leave this area, you have a HUD person with you. If you do leave the building, you need to go back through security. But again, we'll be here to help you out. We have lots of food options in L'Enfant Plaza. Or if you choose to, there's a break room on the third floor with snacks and coffee, and there'll be several of us who can escort you all up there as a group if you'd like to take that option instead. We will be using Mentimeter again this year. Those of you who were last year, that's the real-time polling software that we use to get your feedback as we go along the day, and we'll explain that to you new folks in a few minutes on how to use it. But it's just a really good way for us to stay engaged all day and share thoughts on what's going on for this meeting and how you'd like to see things go in the future. I would like to introduce Javon. This is Javon's first meeting, so yeah. And he'll go over the agenda with you, but everyone enjoy and kindly put your phones on silent if you don't mind, if you haven't already, so that we can go through the meeting. Thank you, Javon.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Javon Bly. I work with Jane in OCB, in the Office of Capacity Building and Outreach. Today we're going to go over the agenda, and we have a full day for you. We're going to start off with a plenary session, and it's going to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing over the past year in the Office of Housing Counseling. And after we finish the plenary session, we'll be going into a break this morning. So we'll have a break for you this morning, this afternoon, and we also have peer-to-peer breakouts after the break. The first peer-to-peer breakout will be, you'll be able to choose between HUD intermediary oversight for monitoring and also housing counselor certification linkages with other partners, with other HUD partners. So those will be the two peer-to-peer breakouts. And we'll have a newcomers meeting at lunch. About 11:45 we'll break for lunch, and the newcomers can meet up from 11:45 to about noon to see where you want to go eat. We have the plaza, which is right next door. We have a lot of food options over there. And then we'll be back here starting promptly at 1 o'clock. So, and we'll start with housing counseling, grant, financial reporting, vouchering basically. We'll be going over the vouchering process and how you report. And then we'll go over using social media to increase awareness and visibility of housing counseling. That's going to start about 2:15. So we would like you back in your seats promptly at 1. And then the last peer-to-peer breakout will be starting at 3:30. And you'll have your choice between HUD intermediary best practices and overseeing your network, and also HUD Form 9902 visualization, data visualization. And after that, we'll wrap the day up with takeaways and questions and answers. So that's all we have for you this morning. Rachel Lilliard will be going over, or Shauna, I'm sorry. So Shauna is going to go over Mentimeter for you and tell you how that works.
Okay, thanks so much, Siobhan. Hopefully you have your smartphone ready. This was very popular last year, so hopefully you enjoy it again this year. Thanks again for that warm introduction, and thanks to my ICF team. This is our fifth year, so we're very excited to be here. Mentimeter is something that we used last year, and it is a way to provide some quick feedback to HUD's Office of Housing Counseling, as well as answer fun quizzes that we have throughout the day. It really doesn't get any better than this. So if you have your phone handy, you just log into the Wi-Fi that's here, and it's HUD Guest. It was a different one before, so you might have seen that on some of the materials, but it is HUD Guest. And you should be able to find that in your pick list. And then you open Menti, MENTI.com. And then we have, thanks, Rachel. And then you just simply insert the code that you see at the top, and I'm going to do it along with you just to make sure that we're all set. And then you just put in the code, and then you hit submit. Okay, so hopefully you are ready. Okay, so we have the first question. So the first question is, in 1 or 2 words, what part of the conference do you look forward to the most each year? Some of you are returning folks that have come here every single year. You always come back, and it would be good to have some of the new folks. We have about 20% each year that are new, that we would like to make sure that they know what you find most useful, benefits, and we'll kind of talk about that. Oh, networking is really large. Excellent. So the networking opportunities that are available. Talk about the certification exam. Policy updates. I know you folks always look forward to the HUD plenary session that'll start soon. Seeing friends. We all love friends. Updates. Best practices. Thanks for whoever mentioned best practices. You really can learn a lot from your peers at this meeting, so make sure you take them up on that. Okay, great. All right, and peer-to-peer breakouts. With that, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Very good. Isn't Mentimeter cool? We've gotten a lot of very interesting feedback from it, and it's just one of those, modern way of doing things, and saying HUD and modern in the same sentence always cracks me up. Well, we understand that you're looking forward to some policy updates and updates from the Office of Housing Counseling, and that's what this session is designed to do. I will facilitate this panel, and I am joined by 3 directors at the Office of Housing Counseling who I am very privileged and humbled to work with. On my left is Jerry Mayer, Director of Outreach and Capacity Building. You all now know he's a real person and not just a made-up name in the email box. If you feel you're getting too much email and spam from him, you can talk to me. But we generally get very good feedback from you on that. Brian Siebenlist next is our Director of the Office of Policy and Grant Administration. That means he's in charge of money and policy. So you want to be nice to him. And our last director here is Phyllis Ford, Division Director in our Office of Oversight and Accountability. Any of you who have been here for all 5 of our sessions previously, I believe this is our heavy hitters for the most part, on the plenary session. And I just want to say that it is a great privilege to work not only with them, but with all of the Office of Housing Counseling. I can say with great sincerity, I've never worked with such a phenomenal group of people who I love coming to work every day. And I've worked at wonderful places. So I hate to even call that out, but I have to say this group is something. And thank you. So we're going to, I have to do a clicker thingy, don't I? Should I click? I think I'm capable of clicking. Maybe not. We'll start with a cross-office update. We will then go by office into the updates from 2019 and works in progress that you can expect in 2020. I think now's a good time for me to say that there are, human years in age, 6 months, a year. There are dog years, and then there's HUD years. And so when we talk about what's happened and what's coming, we only have a limited ability to forecast, I have learned. We try hard. So we'll tell you what we think is happening, and we appreciate your patience as we grapple with the inevitable speeding up and slowing down that happens here. I'm going to start with policy updates, and I have a few updates to share with you. First of all, and these are in two big buckets, actually, that we've heard from you repeatedly and other members of the Housing Counseling Program. Number one, we need financial sustainability. We know the HUD grant isn't going to cover all of the costs of the program by any stretch. In fact, you do a great job of leveraging the HUD dollars. Generally, it's been a steady $6 non-federal dollars for every dollar we provide. That's awesome. But having said that, you could use some help on financial sustainability, and we're working on that. Second is awareness and visibility. I think we got tired of being the best kept secret to clients and to other stakeholders. We've been taking steps toward that with your help and in partnership, and we want to share some of that. A third theme of our work is really around oversight. And you hear this a lot in compliance. We have an obligation to make sure the federal funds are well spent. We have an obligation to make sure that if you're delivering HUD housing counseling, you're meeting HUD standards, that each of your sub-agencies are meeting HUD standards as well. You do a great job of that. You've actually really risen to that challenge over the last years of managing the quality that you do, as well as just handing out money. We have an obligation to be better at consistency and clarity of what our rules mean. And we're working hard on that with you, and that will be a theme as well. So just picking out from those items, those matters, a couple items I'll share. And a lot of it does have to do with partnerships. We're working very closely right now with the Consumer Financial Protection Board to work on aligning or understanding the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act and how it relates to lenders' reimbursement for housing counseling programs. I know that's been an issue with some lenders. They are nervous that if they pay for counseling, that it might be a violation of RESPA Section 8. CFPB has been incredibly committed to making clear or to explaining or having a vehicle to explain what is okay and what isn't okay, and we're working very hard with them. I am not going to tell you when I think that's going to come out or how it looks like. I'm not permitted to by law. It will be shared publicly. We expect you to have reaction, but many of you in the room have told us on an individual basis or collectively through your trade associations how important this issue is to you, and we've been trying to take that feedback into account. We've also been working very closely with Treasury, and this may be something you're less familiar with, but I'm really pleased to share it with you today. The Federal Financial Literacy and Education Commission, known as FLEC. How many of you have heard of FLEC? Oh man, 2 of you. Thank you, Bajoki. It's obscure federal commission that contains 22 federal agencies, Department of Defense, Social Security, IRS, and HUD, involved in financial literacy programs, and that would include housing counseling program. The current administration wanted to look at FLEC and whether it was effective, efficient, and had an impact on financial literacy. And they spent a year asking us for data and information about each of these programs. They recently, Treasury gathered that information and produced a report that went public in July of 2019 called Financial Literacy Reform. And that is or will be posted on our HUD Exchange website. If it isn't yet, we will have a link out. In the course of doing federal financial literacy reform, Treasury Department and CFPB, who are the co-chairs of FLEC, really held up HUD's housing counseling program as, I'll use the word from yesterday, exemplary model of what federal financial literacy programs should look like. That we're accountable, that you do a god-awful amount of reporting. It really matters to the accountability of the program, that the federal dollars are leveraged, et cetera. And so they have some ideas for how we could do even better, especially on making metrics more standard across industry. But they have asked HUD to participate as leading a working group on housing counseling across federal agencies. This is an exciting opportunity to work with FEMA, Social Security, other agencies we don't typically work with, to share the message of housing counseling, amplify each other's messages. So you can expect to hear more of that coming up. But as a starting point, in your spare time, you might want to take a look at that report. It's really very helpful. Brian mentioned 2 events earlier for June Homeownership Month, and the Innovative Housing Showcase was really a trip. How many of you were in DC to see the little homes on the mall at the beginning of June? Again? Not many. It is up on HUD's website. There are videos from it, and there were a number of private housing providers who were showing innovative solutions, technology, tiny homes, what can be done with modular housing and manufactured housing. And Housing Counseling was one of the few HUD booths there that actually was able to engage directly with the public who was coming by to see what are these little things doing on the mall. And we had wonderful response from members of the public who clearly didn't know what housing counseling was. We were fortunate to have the materials that we share with you out there, as well as 8 of our partners to say what housing counseling was, and if they're thinking about home ownership or if they're having trouble with renting, the resources that they could see in the DC area. We also had a conference, Brian mentioned, Building Tomorrow Together, to celebrate 50 years of housing counseling. I know some of you are binge watching Stranger Things and other shows. I personally would encourage you to binge watch the Building Tomorrow Together video conference on our website. I think it was fabulous. I learned a lot. You had a lot of people from different industries, the real estate profession, loan originators, different seats, housing counseling, talking about what we can do to take the industry to the next 50 years. And I challenge the audience there and online, and I would challenge you to really see that we're building the base for future ideas and a future, I think, acceptance and support for what housing counseling can mean to any consumer facing a housing challenge, and thinking about ways to capture the value that it gives the consumer from all parties in the transaction. So finally, I'll mention the research project we've had going for a year, inspired by our Federal Advisory Committee, to look at best practices and innovative funding models for housing counseling. And we're getting close to the point of being able to publish and release that. When we do, we will do a webinar on it as well. You'll see some very creative examples of how folks pay for housing counseling. Many of you in the room contributed to case studies there. I want to thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to seeing whether this is just another piece of paper that sits on the shelf, or whether you really get an inspired idea that you can take and apply to your program, or that your affiliates can do. So we've tried to be responsive. We've tried to focus on our priority areas, and I hope we're delivering value for you and your work. That's our job, and the more we can do that, the better. So with that, I'll turn it over, and we will have time at the end of this session for questions. So I'd ask, if you have questions, write them down, but I want to make sure you get all the information from all of us. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian Siebenlist and the Office of Policy and Grant Administration.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. I think before I get started...
Sorry, you're saying what your name is.
Oh, good, yeah. Shauna's going to do Mentimeter, right, before I get started?
Oh.
All right, so go ahead.
Before each of you starts. So we're going to move on to question number 2, and then I'm going to hand it back to Brian. So hopefully you have your phones ready again. Okay, so this is actually something that the DepSec actually covered, the acting DepSec. So how many households were served by the Housing Counseling Program in FY 2018? Okay, so you have choices of 500,000 to 749, 750 to 100,000, $1 million to $1.2 million, or $1.2 million to $1.5 million. All of you are paying amazing attention this morning. So, okay, great. Okay, I think some votes are still coming in, but most of you got it. So it's actually 1,055,167. Thank you. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Shauna. Good morning again. I want to say I'm really proud to be representing the Office of Policy and Grant Administration here this morning, and I have such a great team and group of colleagues. They're just super smart, super dedicated and committed to their work, really hardworking. A bunch of them are here, so I want to embarrass them a little bit and try to call out their names, and if they could stand up and be recognized when I do. I know Terry Ames is here because I was sitting next to her. Yeah, hey, Terry Ames. Kristen Ackerman is in the back there. Hi, Kristen. I think next to her, but I can't see because of that pillar, is Melissa Noe. Melissa, are you back there? Good. Rebecca McLean is probably next to her, if I'm remembering right. They're a good team. They're just sitting back there together. I like that. I know Charlene Young has been here this morning. I don't know if she's in this room right now, but she was helping folks get in to the building and get inside here. Charlene, are you here? She is probably hard at work somewhere outside of this room. So we also have another DC colleague, Colleen Weiser, who you might see. I don't think I've seen her this morning, but you might see her over the next couple days. So hopefully you'll get a chance to meet her. So we have more people on our office, but those are the folks that are here for this, and thanks to them for fantastic work and great team to work with. So I love this event for a lot of reasons. You know, I think probably one of my favorite is gives me a chance to interact, you know, on a personal level with so many housing counselors and program managers, and I learned so much from doing that, and I really love that. So, like for example, I learned this morning. I was talking to this one program manager, and I was just asking her, how's it going? How is everything? You know, she told me, look, I've been a little dismayed lately because she said next to our housing counseling agency, there was right next door a new real estate franchise moved in and opened up their office, and they put up this huge sign over their door, and the sign said best agents, and it was this flashy big sign. She said that really upset her. And then she said, I got even more upset when a couple of weeks later another real estate franchise opened up to the left of me, right on the other side of my door. And they too put up an even bigger, flashier sign. And there said lowest commissions. And she said, wow, that really upset me. Picture it. It's like the little counseling office, small sign, right next to it, these big, flashy, kind of aggressively marketed real estate franchises. And she said she was really panicked about it until she got an idea. And what she decided to do was she decided to put up her own even bigger new sign over the door and sign of the housing counseling agency. So right in the middle. And this new sign reads, main entrance.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you for laughing. I appreciate that. The Mentimeter was a good segue into the first few slides I have here are charts and some data related stuff. And the Mentimeter dealt with, the little over 1 million individuals served in FY18. That's I wanted to just comment on that. That's been true. That looks like where we're projecting to for FY19 as well, so consistent. It was also true about the same, in FY17. So we're hovering at that level the last this year and the last 2 years. Pretty consistent. Now, before that, there was steep decline every year since about 2010, and that was because of foreclosure prevention funding decreasing, and we don't have the chart up, but if you saw it, it was going down, 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 but now we're steadying it out, so that's a good sign. This pie chart really just talks about our latest sort of data set and shows the incidence of the different types of counseling, and I think some of the big takeaways are pre-purchase for housing, individual housing counseling, pre-purchase is almost half of it right now, and the foreclosure prevention mortgage delinquency counseling is down to 21%. And these next two charts sort of show how they trended over the years. So here's foreclosure prevention counseling just dropping, steadily over the last several years. Here's pre-purchase counseling just going up and up to our current levels. So. Good. Let me talk a little bit about some of our accomplishments and the things that we're most proud of. We're proud of our efforts in getting the money out as fast as we can, executing the FY18 grants. We worked hard to get them out as quickly as possible. There were some challenges. The NOFA was delayed in getting out. We had the shutdown, of course, but we got them out. We did as well as we could with those challenges, and we were proud of the changes we made to make it faster. There's been $25 million that's been distributed since the shutdown, the end of January. So, and we're working to continue to improve grant execution, the voucher payment process, grant reporting. There's going to be a session today with a couple of the folks in my office I introduced after lunch. So I want to give them a little plug, and you can learn more about the changes we've made and the changes that we're contemplating during that session. So I encourage you to participate in that. 19 NOFA, that's kind of fresh in everyone's minds because you just went through your application process, and we're going through our scoring and funds control process and get working toward getting those awards announced and executed. So we're hoping that you you haven't gotten your awards yet, so you might reserve your judgment, but we're hoping that you thought it was an improved, easier process, and you saw some of our improvements in thinking and how to make it better. So like some of it was a 2-year NOFA, and that Brian Montgomery was talking about that. We're really glad for that because, the year before we weren't able to do that. I think that's important because it's just going to make it quicker and easier for you next year not to do a complete application. It's going to make it quicker and easier for us to try to come up with the award amounts without having to score a set of applications and get the awards out faster. So that's our goal, and the 2-year NOFA really helps us. I think you'll have noticed it was clearer and more concise. I'm hoping you did. In 18, there had been 6 charts and 2 separate narratives. In this 19 NOFA, there was down to 4 charts and no separate narratives. We tried to shorten it. It was a lot shorter. I forget exactly how much shorter, but we tried to get rid of a lot of overlapping, redundant questions, and we thought we did a good job in consolidating it. And we took some big steps in sort of obtaining a lot of the information from our own internal data sources, pre-existing data sources. That was a big change as well. Instead of asking you to provide it, stuff that we have, it makes it quicker for you, quicker for us to score and process it. It increases the accuracy of the data and our confidence in it and the integrity of the data. In 2018, 31% of the data was verifiable. In 2019, it was up to 65%. So we feel good about that, and that it's a more fair process and one that we can have more confidence in. So all that's good. We really tried to provide timely technical assistance. We had a crack team just going crazy doing FAQs. They did 61 FAQs. After that NOFA was published, answered 220 questions. Hopefully all that was helpful to you all and done in a timely manner. And I know I appreciate the efforts of my team to do that. Okay, let me talk about 9902 changes. One of the big things we've been working on this past year is revising the 9902, so hopefully you sort of get that that's happening, and you can expect a new 9902 for FY 2021. That's our plan for rolling it out for that year, and we're on track for rolling it out. In May and April, we hosted 3 stakeholder feedback sessions, and over 150 of you participated, and we got a lot of good feedback. And so between our ideas and yours, we think we have a solid 9902 that we're going to work to roll out. So stay tuned for that stuff we're working on. We're still working on the handbook, but we're getting there. We're finalizing chapters. This year's been a big program redesign, in some ways focus or rethinking, trying to improve processes. I think that's a better way to say it. And processes like performance reviews, terminations, the voucher payment process, and so a lot of that involves handbook revision, right? So we're still, as we go through that, improving those processes. We're documenting a lot of that in the handbook. So that's part of what we're working on. We are getting set to hopefully roll it out in a way that's going to ask for your feedback. We're on schedule to do that in the third quarter of 2020. So you'll be able to see at that point, once we've cleared it here, you'll be able to see and comment and provide feedback on draft language. So that we'll be looking forward to that. So the other thing, one other thing we're working on is 9902. You heard a little bit about how this afternoon there's going to be a session on the data displays, and Kristen and Melissa are going to be involved in that. I encourage you to check that out, but they're working with the ICF team here to sort of visually just improve the way we take that 9902 data and we make dashboards and charts and tools that people can use to tell the story of the counseling work that's occurring. Hopefully it'll be helpful to help folks justify apply for funding. We hope it's useful in a lot of ways and tell the story of what the good work that you do. So tune into that peer-to-peer session. It's at 3:30 this afternoon. What else? We're also working on the HECM default counseling capacity building efforts that Brian Montgomery mentioned this morning. So we're deeply involved in that. Like I said, besides the handbook, we're working on standard operating procedures on some of those process improvement areas, like how do we do the performance reviews better? How do we do the voucher payments better? So we're working on not just handbook changes, but potentially regulation changes in those areas and developing standard operating procedures so we know how to approach those tasks in an improved and consistent way. So I think that's it for me. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jerry Mayer. So thank you, everyone. I look forward to meeting folks and talking to you later.
All right, thank you, Brian. Oh, we have a Mentimeter first.
Okay, so thanks. This is the third question. Hopefully you still have your smartphones right there. If you do need the code, if you need to log back in, that code is in the upper right-hand corner. Just go ahead and put in that code, and it'll always be there for you. So the next question is, what percentage of intermediary agencies have HUD-certified counselors as of August 1st of 2019? So what percentage do you think? Lots of folks voting 51%. That's it? Are you sure? Give it a little bit more time. A couple people think that 82%. A few folks think 79%.
This is not good.
We're going to take a little longer on this question than the prior questions. A few more people think 65%. So you think about, 65% of the folks. Still more votes coming in. Okay. We'll go ahead and provide the right answer. The right answer is 79%. And that is for 49 agencies out of 62 total. So great job, you guys.
All right. Hi, everybody. Let's settle down. After that, our intermediaries are doing well, but there's still some work to be done. Those numbers did reflect that some intermediaries in the room do not have any certified counselors yet. I happen to have a report with the numbers, so I'll be visiting with each of you. But before I get started, I just want to acknowledge the outreach and capacity building staff that are here in the room with us today. If you're OCB, please stand up. We have Suzanne Isaacs, Jane Sharita, who you've already met, and Javon Bly, who you've already met, Joel Ibanez, Robin Penick, Lorraine Griscavage-Frisbee, and Imelda Kennelly is here somewhere. And Judy Ayers, of course. Thank you, Sarah. Can't forget Judy. So certification. Let's start off with some of the things we have on the HUD Exchange that we've just posted for you. We're constantly improving the certification landing page, largely based upon the feedback that we get from our housing counseling industry. We just posted a little widget on the upper right corner of that page, which is a very stressful little countdown clock. It actually goes to the second. All right. And by the way, 2020 is a leap year, so it looks off by a day. Who knew it was a leap year, but they tell me. We're at about 360 days to go for certification. Generally, the overall industry is about 26% by agency in terms of having a certified counselor on board by 8/1/20. It's August 1st, 20. And the intermediaries, of course, ahead of the curve because you are the leaders in this. But there's still a lot of work to be done on certification. We have some best practices to point out, and they're in this room, so you could talk to your colleagues and talk to them. If you were to talk to the folks in the Colorado Housing Finance Agency, and I know it's not called the Housing Finance Agency, but they have done a fantastic job of pulling their network together and collaborating amongst each other, forming study groups, helping each other, sending pathfinders to take the tests. And I was out there last month and I saw 6 of their agencies, and each one had 1 to 3 certified counselors, and in only one case, all of them had passed the exam on the first throw. And that was because they had great support, and that makes the difference in passing this exam. It's really, really important to prepare your counselors and make sure that they're ready for this. If you look at Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, they were giving scholarships to take the exam, and they've had a great success with their counselors getting them certified. The state of Virginia is doing amazing training, with their counselors and making sure that they get through. And if you look at other organizations that aren't housing finance agencies, for instance, UNIDOS US, one of our training grantees, is doing a new train and test model, where basically if you want to get a scholarship to go take one of their courses, you're going to need to take the test right after the course. All right? And that addresses the procrastination issue. And wow, there's a lot of procrastination out there. I think we're closing in on about 1,000 certified counselors nationwide. The last number I saw was about 970, but I think we might have crossed 1,000, probably by today. And but we don't really know how many counselors there are out there until they're all certified. Then we'll have like a census and we'll know. So it could maybe top out around by 8/1/20, maybe 2,000 to 3,000, hopefully. Like I said, we don't really know how many there are, and we're going to find out, I guess. One of the other new things that we launched on that certification page to help counselors was that knowledge assessment tool. And how many of you are using that? Are your counselors? And you're liking it? Is it good? Yes? Good. That was from your feedback. We were told that the practice exams were not sufficiently providing feedback so that they knew what to study. We had intended the practice exams really to be just a familiarization tool, but this is actually giving some feedback on the areas where they need to study. So hopefully we'll see an uptick in certification, the certification rate. But before I move on, I just want to introduce Lorraine, who has a couple of comments about what we're going to be doing in our next breakout session. And hopefully that mic is live.
We'll find out.
We'll find out, otherwise project.
Good morning, everybody. And I want to share some exact numbers. And first of all, we're absolutely delighted with all of the intermediaries that took up Sarah's challenge last year to work on getting your network certified. And those of you that haven't started, Jerry will be visiting you during breaks. We do actually have 975 certified housing counselors as of the end of July. So that's a great number. We're expecting to hit 1,000 by the end of August. But a couple of things that I just wanted to quickly point out. On the knowledge assessment tool, that is a great tool for your counselors to use before they start studying. It'll give them a lot of feedback, and it'll tell them, exactly what they need to focus their studying time on. They should also use the knowledge assessment tool after they're finished studying, and the practice exam is still there. They need to use that practice exam. The practice exam is designed to give them a feel for what the actual exam is going to be like. So some very important tools. I also want to share with everyone there are going to be some minor updates in September in training and in the exam. But the rumor mill, we've heard through the rumor mill that people somehow think the exam is going to become easier with that update. That is not true. I'm here to dispel this rumor. Do not wait for the later version if your employees are ready, if your counselors are ready to take the CERT exam. So we're very excited to have everyone here and progressing towards certification. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Lorraine. And I just want on certification just leave you with this, and that is that we're here to support you. If you're unsure how to get started, don't wait and don't be embarrassed about that. Send me an email, and you all have my email address. I know that. Send me an email, and we will hook you up with the resources you need to succeed. We are here to support you. Take advantage of that support. There's a lot of great support in this room. You're part of a fantastic community, and you can rely on each other. I know every single executive in this room, manager, counselor, if asked to help another agency, would jump at the chance and take advantage of that resource here. And that's one reason why we do this every year, so that you all can network and share resources. So take advantage of that. Moving on, Federal Advisory Committee. We've made some nice progress on that this year. We have some new members, and I'm going to read their names because I have them on a list. Patricia Arviello, Edsel Cunningham, Glenn Holmes, Song Hutchins, Marsha Lewis, Martin Sundquist, and Paul Yorkis will join the existing members, E.J. Thomas, Judy Hunter, Pam Marin, and Afreen Alam, to form our Federal Advisory Committee, which we love. The Federal Advisory Committee has done great work giving us advice on what we should be focusing on. And one great example that's come out of that is HECM default counseling. And I see Buzz sitting right here, who challenged us and advised us strongly that this was an area that we had to pay attention to and we could make a difference in. And we listened to Buzz and the rest of the committee, and now we're doing a lot of great work building up HECM default counseling to help those seniors through that. And thank you, Buzz, for that, because we wouldn't have done that if you hadn't pushed us. So thank you. We believe we're going to go for September for next meeting?
We're not ready to announce that.
No? All right,
I know,
maybe?
Yeah, we don't have a quorum yet. So.
but we'll let you know when the next meeting is going to be so that you can tune in and you could hear what advice is being given to the department. The Disaster Assistance and Recovery Team is working very hard to support you in responding to disasters. They happen in just about every state, big ones, little ones, natural ones, man-made ones, and they all affect our clients. And our counseling agencies are right there on the front lines helping those people. And up till recently, doing it in obscurity. Most communities did not know that housing counseling agencies are doing this kind of work. I was up in Santa Rosa last year or the year before, I'm not sure, visiting with the Catholic Charities up there. That was just amazing. They had seen 2,000 people families from the Coffee Park fire, which had burned out 4,500 homes, and they were right on the edge of Coffee Park themselves. That Catholic Charities was in danger of burning down. The next day, they were seeing people. I mean, they were right into action. And the thing is, no one knew. They were just doing it because that's what they do. That's what you do. You just help people and you do it whether you're getting paid or not. You're going to be out there doing it. But what we want to do is make sure that you're supported in doing this. So we're making a few little changes. Brian had mentioned the 9902 report. And one of the things that we're adding to that is a whole new section on disaster counseling. Disaster prevention counseling, sort of classroom style, and then disaster assistance counseling to help people who have lost their homes or are displaced and need help. We know that this is a long-term kind of thing. When you do this kind of counseling, there are two phases. There's the initial phase where you're just stabilizing people who may be soaking wet and they just need a blanket and a bottle of water and a place and a cot. And a lot of housing counselors are manning FEMA centers helping that. But the real work for housing counselors begins the day after. How do you help them recover? How do you help them communicate with FEMA? How do you get a new roof on that house? Or if the house is gone, how do you get them into a new living arrangement? And it's really, really critical when it happens to your community and it's your agencies that are involved. Down in Puerto Rico, they got hit by storms that were leveled whole villages and towns. And we have, I think, about 6 agencies down in Puerto Rico who jumped into action immediately. We surveyed them to see who was up and running, and almost all of them were up and running the next day. And they were just sub-assigned funding from CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, DR, which is Disaster Recovery Funds. And they were the group of them were just sub-assigned about $4.5 million, came down through state government to do housing counseling. So there is funding that comes down through CDBGR, and there's a lot of money. I think this year it's about $85 billion has so far been allocated. And there have been disasters. If you've been reading the FEMA site or looking at the listserv, there are disasters going on, on a near continual basis. It's not just the giant hurricanes or earthquakes or fires. There are things going on in local communities all the time. And when they do have individual assistance, there's potential for housing counseling agencies to be involved. The critical part is being involved in local disaster planning in advance. One of the things that we had gotten through with our CPD colleagues was the need to consult with housing counseling agencies as part of disaster planning. So your affiliates need to talk to their local communities to become part of the plan so that if a disaster hits their community, they are ready, along with the other entities in that community, to respond, and then somewhere down the line, hopefully receive funding in order to compensate them for the good work that they're doing. It does take some time for the CDBG-DR funding to trickle down to our agencies, but it does arrive. So some of this work will be compensated later or paid for later. But either way, the work that you've all been doing on disaster counseling is amazing. It is certainly a best practice, and we totally applaud your efforts, and thank you for that. Some other tools and resources that we have posted on our HUD Exchange page, which we're very happy with, to tell you the truth. Thank you, Shauna. With ICF has been helping us with that. We have a new disclosure toolkit that we posted, which is very useful. When I go out and I do a performance review, if I see a problem, like on a disclosure, I give them the disclosure toolkit and problem solved. Because they look at the toolkit, they see what it is, and they fix the disclosure problem. There's lots of good toolkits on our webpage, and we're coming up with a lot more toolkits for you as well. And I think I may have a list of them, actually, of what's coming up. We have limited English proficiency toolkit coming up. We have an agency work plan toolkit coming up. And much more also. We also have some online training, too, that we're going to be rolling out for you as well on a variety of subjects. We have a new HECM landing page on the HUD Exchange, which has really two paths to it, one for lending community, one for the counseling community. Origination and default are covered on that. And how to become a HECM roster counselor is covered there. So if you're doing reverse mortgage work, that's a great page to look at. And let's see, what's
You're
next?
on the next.
Oh, they moved it ahead for me. Let's see, we have some webinars coming up for you, Counseling in the Digital Age, which will be very interesting. We're going to talk about technology. And a little plug for tomorrow. I hope a lot of you come back for tomorrow's session. We're going to have some CMS providers here to talk to you all. I know there's a lot of worry about when Counselor Max and HCO go away, and the replacement systems for those are going to be highlighted tomorrow, along with a couple of other systems that you might want to consider as well. There'll be hands-on demonstrations, there'll be presentations, there'll be an opportunity to talk to those vendors. So if your agency is wondering, you know, where are we going to go with that, tomorrow would be a good session to attend. David Young is here with us today, who is from Housing Action Illinois, and he's going to be working with us tomorrow on that. If you have not read the Housing Action Illinois Guide to CMS Systems, I would urge you to download and read that. It is a fantastic guidebook and is very informative and will help you make the decision on your new CMS system if you're affected by the HCO or Counselor Max issue. And I'm running out of time, so I have to speed this up. I've just gotten a little note. We're going to roll out that PII home free. Thank you for pushing us on that. They circle back with me every couple of weeks or so and say, hey, where's my PII course? And we're going to get it out for them. We're working on that. And then finally, ICF is going to be doing a needs assessment with you to find out what you need for training and resources and things like that that should be on our HUD Exchange page. So if the good folks at ICF do reach out to you, please respond to them and tell them what you need. Go right ahead and you know, tell them exactly what you need, and you know, good, bad, or whatever, we want to hear it. So with that, I will see you actually in the next session on certification. And we'll look forward to talking to you then. And I'll turn it over now to Phyllis Ford, who is going to talk to you about our monitoring.
Okay, yeah, go.
Okay. Hi there, everybody. Great to be here with you. I always love this. It gives me an opportunity to learn an awful lot, and I appreciate your partnership. I'm wondering who from OOA, Office of Oversight and Accountability, may be in the room. I see Keisha, would you stand up? Keisha Wright is Acting Director of Oversight and Accountability, and as such, my boss, so treat her nicely. I also see Jennifer. Jennifer Smith is a Housing Specialist Extraordinaire, and she's here in the office. Is George in the room? I thought I saw George earlier. George is our HCS guru and the person you may have to reach out to just before your panic goes into overload if you're having a problem with HCS or some sort of input. So let's talk about our OOA's accomplishments this year. Well, of course, I'm always going to talk about performance reviews. I mean, that is our bread and butter. And a good thing that we can lay credit to, excuse me, is that we've increased our cooperation with intermediaries in conducting performance reviews. I know that I have been on several where I was there and the intermediary representative was actually there in the room too, and it makes it so much better because they hear from us, your subs hear from us, but they also hear from you, and that reinforces whatever is being said. And it allows an opportunity for us to achieve one of our goals, which is greater clarification on what is being done. This year, we managed to complete 315 performance reviews for the period ending September 30th, 2018. We're on target to do even more for September 30th, 2019. So just hang in there with us. We're getting where we need to go, and we're getting there with your help. Overall compliance strategies have been improved over the course of this year in terms of accomplishment. We've heard what you said. We hear you saying that we need consistency. And so we've put an emphasis on training, internal training for our POCs, the folks that you work with directly. We've implemented some new strategies for that training with the POCs, so to make sure that they are comfortable and have a almost entertaining way to learn the things that they need to learn towards compliance. We've come up with a POC forum. We have a POC chat where people get a chance to just talk about how they handle things, and that lets us know where there are differences in how things are being handled. We have a POC newsletter, and it also highlights some of the folks who are currently POCs and what it is that they may be addressing, and highlight some of their skill sets. And of course, everybody gets and reads the newsletter, the Bridge newsletter. But if in fact you have an issue with some inconsistencies, or you have an issue that you want to raise, feel free to give me a call, because we will work with you, we will work with the POC. Sometimes we're not always right. And so if you find something that you think, I'm not sure about this, and I need every bit of credit that I can get, give me a call and we'll work it out. I've worked with several of you in this room, and I think to the satisfaction of several of you in this room. We're definitely committed to improving our monitoring and the delivery of our programs, and we're working towards things like, for both our POCs and our stakeholders, we want to make sure that we use upgrades to technology and definitely streamlining policies and procedures. So what are our oh, you know I can't do two things at one time. Okay, so what are our priorities? What were our priorities this year? Okay, ensure performance reviews completed with an agency applicable approval time period. That's a lot to say, but I'm not sure everybody understands that. Okay, so your agencies, if they have a time for their approval, the LHCAs have a time for approval, never more than 3 years, and anywhere from 1 to 3 years, depending on how well they did the last time we took a look at them. Sometimes that has fallen behind because we have a lot of agencies, and to the LHCAs, we also go out and look at the subs who are not LHCAs, who are not directly HUD approved. So consequently, that's a lot to be done. And some may not have gotten reviewed appropriately within that time period. So our goal this year has been getting that done, and it has been working. So I'm proud of that, and it's good for you as well, because it helps you understand just where your subs are. One of the biggest things that I think that we've been able to accomplish, and we're still working on, is simplifying the required documentation when you want to make a voucher request, and when you're trying to, when you have to document your expenditures, and that's real important. So we have done some things. We've done some very targeted training. training across the board, and then training for agencies individually to make sure that we are on board with what it is that we need to do. The other thing that we have focused on and are still focusing on, is still work in progress, is updating the procedure for an agency withdrawal and, I hate to say, termination. But these are steps that we have to take because we have to document, we have to provide support. Sometimes an agency may want to withdraw for reasons that can be helped by our reaching out and talking to them or providing some additional support. So we do that. So that's definitely one of our accomplishments in terms of trying to make life easier for you, at the same time making life easier for us. We are working across all offices to update program guidelines regarding the agency withdrawal. So our handbook as well as our procedures will reflect whatever changes, whatever advances, not just changes, whatever advances we make in that line. Work in progress 2020. I think they're using this as a way to push me on, so okay, I'll be faster. Okay, work in progress 2020. We're saying establish policies and procedures to define, identify, assess risk with intermediaries for future performance reviews. The most important thing that we have to do is to protect our money. We have to protect the money that we provide for housing counseling. And how do we do that? We minimize risk. So we're working with our Office of Risk within HUD, and we're working with you, and we're identifying areas in which risk can be minimized. Now, Jerry said he's coming out to visit every agency. Well, I'm going to hang out with him, and we're going to come and visit. Well, maybe not with him, because he talks more than I do, but if you can believe that. But anyhow, but at any point, we want to work with you in terms of making you understand what our goal is and helping protect you from any risk issues, okay? So we will be hanging out with you. And it's important. I can't stress how important, and it's tedious. I understand that, the whole documentation, compliance with one rule or the other. I understand how that's all very, very challenging, but it's very, very important. It's important to you, for your agency's reputation and the work that you do. It's important to HUD for what we do, and more importantly, it's important to our consumers. So that's what we will be doing. We'll be there helping you to be on target and trying to make sure that we're meeting our responsibility. Because sometimes if we don't meet our responsibility, you may face the loss of some funding, and that's very, very not happy news. So, and I'm not going to close off on a negative note. I'm going to close out by saying thank you for being our partners, and I look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you.
We do have time for some questions, so if you'd be so kind to line up at the mic so we capture your questions, I'm happy to take some. I know you're not a shy group. Oh, and Ellie is not shy. Thank you. Oh, you're the mic. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So my question...
do identify yourself.
Oh, Ellie Pepper with National Housing Resource Center. I wondered if HUD has had any conversations or thoughts about, after August 1st, 2020, how we're going to be moving forward as far as keeping counselors on staff and keeping agencies certified. So especially smaller agencies that maybe only have one or two counselors on staff, and say they retire, they move to other organizations. What is there thinking about a process and a timeline for a group that needs to bring on a new counselor that is technically or possibly not certified yet?
Thank you. I'll answer a little bit of that and turn it over to Jerry. The the concern about continuity of certification is a big one. And for a small agency that has a certified counselor on August 1st, but then loses that counselor down the road, is something to think about. I think, and there are some legal issues around what happens and what doesn't happen. So we are working to spell that out and to also put together our monitoring so that if an agency falls out of compliance, they just don't have a certified counselor after August 1st, that agency will not be able to report to HUD the counseling that, well, it's not supposed to be doing counseling if it doesn't have a certified counselor. We believe there are some strategies to address that, including important roles intermediaries can play. Both volunteers, part-time folks, people who might have passed the test and an agency is willing to stand behind are people who could step in and sort of having a substitute teacher pool, having a substitute counselor pool. So we're open to ideas. We want to gather them and share them. We think it's very important to have a continuity of service. I know some agencies already have arrangements with other agencies close by to share counselors if needed, and that's something that is okay with our rules. We just want to be very clear about it. But there are other creative ideas that you will come up with, and we will be eager to work with you on. You want to add anything?
Well, Ellie, thank you for that question. I really do appreciate it. And also, I just wanted to call out NHRC's best practice on virtual study groups to help counselors become certified. That's a really great innovation, especially for rural agencies that might be isolated and can't get together. So thank you for that. And, you know, to answer your question quickly, we think about this all the time. I mean, seriously, almost every waking moment, we think about what's going to happen on 8/120, what's going to happen on 8/2/20, right? I mean, that is what keeps me up at night. It really does. We want your suggestions. We're part of your community. You're part of our community. We're all in this together. We're following the law. We want to make sure we do the right thing. We want to make sure we do no harm to our industry. So if you all want to give us suggestions, help, tell us what's going on out there as we approach 8/120 and what the projected effects you see are, please tell us. And that will help inform our decision process and make sure that this happens smoothly for all of you. So thank you, Ellie, for lifting that up.
Other questions?
So I just wanted to comment on Ellie's question.
Terry, share with
I'm
us your
sorry.
name and where you're
My name is
from.
Terry Redmond. I'm with the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. I'm glad to be here. In Pennsylvania, we got the housing counseling job on the high priority list for under labor and industry. So many of the housing counseling agencies use on-the-job training or speak of on-the-job training when they're dealing with other partners and business associates. Because the housing counselor job is on the high priority list, you can use on-the-job training, and you can also get new people coming into the industry interested in housing counseling trained through the career link centers and things like that. So we are putting together some information to inform our agencies on how to access those resources to kind of build a pool of new people who may be displaced to be interested in the job of housing counseling.
That's interesting. And of course, people can, if they pass the test, they're not certified until they associate with an agency and you're willing to stand behind them. But having a reserve pool of people that you've vetted that may be available as substitutes is one practice. And so I thank you. And I think both Ellie and Terry, as you know, they were founding members of our advisory committee, and their work continues to be really very much appreciated. Other questions? I think that we will, well, as you know, you can ask us questions anytime, and many of you do. So we'll start for the break a little early, unless there are any announcements before we go to the next session.
I think just a reminder that we have a break now. So we have peer-to-peer sessions that start at 10:45. There will be two. There's one in this room and one in the room next to us. So the one that will be in this room is oversight and monitoring that Phyllis Ford will be doing. And then next door in C, we will talk about housing counselor certification linkages with other HUD programs. So we'll take a break now and we'll see you at 10:45. Thanks so much.